What world do you see? Hello, everyone. I would like to talk to you today about a very interesting topic. And so we see that as we open our eyes, we're immediately confronted by the world that we see. And so how are we aware of our world? How are we aware of the presence within the presence? And so how are you looking at yourself? And so if you were to simplify all questions, if you were truly an intellectual man, you would try to observe the origin of intellect. And you would see that the origin of intellect, if it is taken to be one of structure, cannot be found. But if an unstructured observance carries on through the various formats of energetic fluctuation, you would see that there would be a wisdom found of some sort. We are not here to assure one another of certain things, but to, in a sense, communicate in a way that it is clean, clear, and authentic. We want authentic human beings. We want authentic communication, because authentic communication is not trying to feed anything to anyone. It is simply the presence it is. And as you become rooted in your knowing, you will see the potential of the fruitful realities that one can be present in a sense is. So do not take an idea too seriously so that you begin looking for images and new images, and so are curious in that way. Acknowledge an idea as being immediately a mirror showing you what you are seeing within an external form. And immediately as you become aware of why there is individuation, the collective observance is found. It is very simple. Now, what becomes a bit more even simpler is how man can behave in a way where it is as if he has gently walked into his future. How can your knowing and your many methods and senses of ability alter? If they were to ask Mr. Within, what world does he see? He would say there are many worlds that can be seen. But to be aware of who is seeing is a question beyond the shapes man is familiar with. In other words, we are not bothered by that which is relevant, but rather more curious and wondrous about the irrelevant relationships that life has. What that means is that the shade may show you a shape that is not you, in which you may consider. But in essence, it is your light that is projecting the holographic reality that you are beginning to find more hollow as you begin to observe self. I have noticed that in certain states of contemplation, that once the human being observes his mind, he begins to introduce to himself a sense of awareness to where his longing for a search comes from. In other words, where is your excitement originating from? Is it based on thought? Or is it simply based on an engagement and awareness of the moment that makes you jump out of your seat? You can see that once you begin confronting the idea of self, there are some habits that you have in your mind. So similar to how we have habits in physical reality, we also have habits in regards to the images we have kept real for ourselves. In other words, let's say you have kept certain images throughout your day real for you, but in different ranges of realness. What that means is, for example, the things that you see in front of you throughout the day are real, very real. The things that you hear about or see on news, or in a sense just read about, you are trying to make it real based on what is immediately real. There is a certain range of reality which man is considering. Now, certain people who shift beyond this range of reality, who begin to alter their focus, we begin calling, in a saying, insane. But it is not that they are insane, it is that our sanity is underdeveloped. So the insane should not be condemned to limitation, but to actually allowed to be present in an environment where that human being can be useful to the cause of humanity. We don't want to create agitation for forms of life. You do not want to, for example, just go pick out or take out the fruits of a tree that the fruits are not ready yet. You can't do that, but it is unnecessary. The people who feel that your problems are originating from others, you will recognize that life will show you the end of the cave. And so it will get dark, but only to show you the light of your greater knowing of not needing to change the external reality, but to, in a sense, navigate through an ability to internally confront all that can be external. You see, some ideas, their excitement is not communicated properly and the idea dies. What that means is every great idea that is continuing now is because people are asking it. If every human being on the planet stopped talking and there never was sound, the intelligence and behavior of human beings would be very different. So imagine now we have the volume up. Now humanity has the volume up a lot. So let's say that you have the volume up to a point where other sectors, or let's say other aspects of space, are beginning to pay attention to. So what that means is your neighbor is hearing the noise that you're making. And so as we joyfully dance on Gaia's lap, in essence, the noise that is made begins to be a greater and louder moment of possible co-creation. You see, we have an understanding that a man is attracted to a woman. And so there is this attraction, and it doesn't have to be just a man and a woman, it's those energies and those expressions that begin to, in a sense, blend with one another. The surface of things is very interesting, but it is a lot of requirement of attention. So what that means is if you want to change something externally, you got to go change the whole world. Let's say if tomorrow I begin not liking jackets, for example, and so instead of me changing my opinion of jackets, I go around and begin telling people to take off their jackets because a new sun is coming. It's very important to recognize that entanglement can occur both in physicality, but also in how the physical, in a sense, begins to emerge into a formless sense of its own observance, of its own shaped observance. So what that means is man has a potential now to recognize himself as the mind. So in other words, you have a mind and you're here right now. That is one possibility. But there's also a very firmly rooted possibility of an existential being present here by a collective consideration. And what that means is that if you were to visualize a circle, the circumference, once it looks within, has only one center to look at. And so the radius is simply the bridge to the center of your world. And so when you enter the center of your world, you begin to recognize that existential commonality that takes away the hierarchy, but shows you also why the hierarchy is there. In other words, great existential wisdom at first rejects you to then have you engage it in a way where it is always embracing you. You are an evolving being. Look at what existential doorstep we have come to. Many people do not recognize the beauty of remembering nothing and to, in a sense, opening your eyes very new. Look at how much existence there is. And so if energy cannot be destroyed but it is transformed, and if there have been memories that have been beacons for more than one time and space continuum of life, you begin to appreciate the transparency that has kept your consciousness excited to even be present here. Whoever you are, very beautifully and graciously and with the mystic's mind, with the mystic's eye, see the amount of beauty and compassion there is in this existence. You have walked to this doorstep. You are in this form. You're in this life form. And so you're aware of other life forms. And so you recognize you can't truly understand other life forms until you truly understand yourself, because all your considerations of others are coming from self. And so mental circuitry no longer needs to bother you, but there needs to be an appreciation that the fields that even conceive an individuality are always its own expansion. In other words, once you see that you can see through the eyes of your creation, you are always looking at yourself. You know, when the creation can look at creator, when the creator created a form that could be aware of a greater form. So we must all clap for the existential intelligence that has created the duality that has kept us separate in our very knowable realms of unknown existence. Be comfortable in your walks and learn not just from others, but from the environment that has kept you present, not in just physicality, but also in the subtler realms of your own consideration, where you dissolve into many aspects of a multidimensional being, simultaneously communicating through not form, but an awareness of form that is its own unique glimpse. You know who you are, and that is why you are who you can be. When you recognize the permission existence has given you to exist, and the possibility of reaching states of awareness that can alter not just the quality of your life, but your existential understanding, man does not want to hide in classrooms where his head's on the table because he's too bored. We want every human being to be so excited about their moment of existence that there's no longer a question of health. There's no longer a question of right and wrong, but an ability for the eyes of man and the eyes beyond man to look through a gaze where the collective knowing is acknowledging its individual uncertainty. you give yourself the greatest existential permission. For the child of existence never had a father. It was very beautifully and traditionally unborn in its many births. And so when you as a human form get a self-awareness that your birth never took place, there's no longer a judgment of form, because you realize who you are as a being is beyond a state of mind limited to judgment. So in other words, I can judge the world. I can judge myself. Do you know? I can do it as long as I want. But why is there a need for? Why is there a need for it? Why is there a need to communicate in ways where our worlds seem to be darker when they're actually very bright? You see, I have noticed that many people have their own unique beliefs, but when you communicate, or at least I have noticed this in the English language, when you communicate, you are still communicating based on certain accepted imagery. So the words in the dictionary are never new words, but they become new when others acknowledge it and then begin co-creating by accepting that form as a stable point. Your mentality and your attitude subjects you to various experiences of objectivity. But the intention of a higher being is never to go higher. It is to transcend the hierarchy. And so as the highest peak of the mountain smiles at the pebble at the bottom, the infinity symbol was never twisted because the circle of life was found. Through life, I have found that when we ask what world do you see, if you're a being that is acknowledging a spectrum of realms of existence, then your navigation through it is based on really how comfortable you are with the imagery you're keeping, in a sense, in front of your face. In other words, sometimes the person who's wearing a mask recognizes he's wearing a mask and he's fine with it, but sometimes forgets how others are seeing the mask. So what that means is, let's say you find that you have listened to the voice of conscious men, and so you are now interested in consciousness as the origin of reality rather than the physical evidence that we have. Now, to step into this realm, we really need to see what is real. And what is very meaningful is that there's a certain intensity in how your gaze looks at things, that when that intensity comes, you will see that you really know yourself, but you still don't know yourself. Do you know? You have known yourself from the beginning of your birth, of your physical birth. But you will see that there will come moments in life where that intensity will say, do you really still think you know yourself? Or do you want me to show you? And that is the voice of life to a man who feels he's deaf. Interest yourself, not in your interests, but in yourself. Observe the elegance in how you look at things and recognize that you are a unique explorer for humankind. You are stretching this, in a sense, clay that we are trying to create an interesting reality with. Take value in creation and in existence more than the ideas or the separate individual considerations that you consider. In this world of worlds. What world do I see? What world do you see? What world can you see? What world can't you see? And what world is here? What world is now? And so, if that moment has come to you where you recognize you never needed to ask a question, where you were so certain about where you must go because you have walked this path before, let your smile inspire action. Let your ability to receive show you the beauty in the expression you can be. And so as pilots of consciousness are awakened, you will see that man will begin communicating the beauty in how he navigates through the world of form. And perhaps the next time you hear the question, what world do you see? Or in a sense ask, what world do I see? In the emptiness of the void, remember the beauty of transparency. Much blessings and namaste.